Hi guys, welcome to this video to explain iteration. Essentially, iteration just means loops. Computer programmers are kind of lazy, and if they can, they will try and automate as much as they can rather than repeat themselves. So often what we want to do is use loops to repeat code over and over again, and there are two main types of loops. The first type of loop we're looking at here is a definite or a definitive loop. What that essentially means is that you know how many times you want it to loop. Our problem here is that we want to write an algorithm that counts from 1 to 100. Now we could write the code to output 1, output 2, output 3, etc. But we do not want to do that. We know we want it to loop 100 times. And the type of loop we want to use when we know how many times it wants to loop is a for loop. So I'm going to write in the type of loop it is, which is a for loop. The next thing we want to do is we want to use a variable to count for us. So my variable is C, and then I'm going to assign it a value, and the value I'm going to assign it for is going to be 1, and I'm going to go from 1 to 100, which makes sense because I wanted to start at 1. I'm going to go up to 100, and then down here I'm going to end the for loop. What's going to happen is that this loop effectively is going to go execute. C is 1, then C is 2, then I go down, C is 2, C is 3, C is 4, C is 5, etc, etc, etc. Now I haven't solved my problem because I haven't actually made it output anything. So I'm going to use the command to output, and what I'm going to output is I'm going to output the number. So I'll say the number is, and I'll use a plus to stick it on, and I'll say C. And that works because the variable I have there will be 1, so it will say the number is 1, the number is 2, the number is 3, and I'll keep going up to 100. Very powerful tool. So hopefully that last exercise went fairly well. We're now going to add a little bit more complexity for our for loop. Now, if I read the problem, it says we write an algorithm that allows the teacher to enter in the test scores for 10 students. So this 10 students, that's how I know it's a for loop problem, because I know how many times I want it to go around, 10 times. And then it says these tests are scored between 1 and 100. Please output the average score and the highest score. I'm going to tackle this in sections. So the first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to put in the for. So I know it's a for loop, and I know I want it to go from 1 to 10. So I'm going to use another counter. So I could say, I used C last time, short for counter, but this time I'll use I. That really makes no difference, but I just wanted to prove to you that it doesn't matter what variable you have. That is a terrible arrow. 1 second. So we're going to assign that the value 1, and we want to go to 10. Now what this is going to do is it's going to say I first time is 1, and then 2, and then 3, etc. And it says it allows a teacher to enter the tests. To enter the tests, I'm going to want the person to input that information, but the person needs to know that they're being asked to input it. So I need a little message and say output. So this is a message to the user, in this case this teacher. Please enter test score. Whoops. It would appear that I cannot spell score. Test score, and that person will get that message. And the next thing we need to have happen is that the score is going to have to be received. Now I haven't got a variable for that right now, so I'm going to go put one in play here, and my variable is going to be test. And the way it works is we want to assign to that the user input. So essentially, if I did nothing else right now, it will ask 10 times to enter the test score, and then for that score to be received. But that's not just what I want to do here. It says output the average score. Realistically, the way I could do that is I could have some kind of variable for the total. So I'll do that before the for loop. So I'll have a total. And obviously at this point, the value of the total will be 0. What's going to happen is every time the test score is inputted, the total will have that added to it. So let's say the first test score is 50. The total is then updated with that score. Wow, that is an even worse error than last time. So the total will be the total plus the test score. So you can see here, effectively, that total will be the total plus the test. So total originally is 0. We add whatever the person's typed in. So as you say, 50. 50 gets added to the 0, and now total is 50. It then goes around another loop, and then maybe the next time it's 20. Total was 50 plus 20. Total is now 70. And it's going to keep doing this until we're at the end of the for loop. What we haven't done is we haven't entered the for, but of course we have one more problem to solve here, is we need to say what is the highest test score. Well, what we want to do is we're going to have a new variable called highest. Oops, wrong one. Highest. And you know, I'm going to set highest to be the value. My arrows are actually getting worse and worse. My apologies. The highest I'm going to set to be 0. Now you're thinking, well, surely the highest number is going to be higher than 0. Yes, it will. Because what we want to do is every time they input this new test, this new value, we'll go if the test, that's the test score, is higher than highest. So we're saying that highest is 0 at the start. If the test score is 50, is 50 bigger than 0? Yes, it is. And then what we can have happen is that highest becomes that test score. Let's say they input the next test score, and the next test score is 30, and then you look here, see here? So the test score was 30, and you say, is 30 bigger than highest? Highest is now 50, and you'd say 30 is not bigger than 50, so you wouldn't update it. Let's tidy this up so we can end that if, we can end that for, and I've managed to really condense my space down here, unfortunately, so I'm going to squeeze this in. I need to output what? I need to output two things. I need to output the average score. The way I'll do that is I have a total of the complete score, so I would say average is, I'm going to round space, is total divided by 10. And we could also say, we should say, my apologies, I really ran out of space here, we'd say highest, high is highest. And then what's happened is the loop's going to run 10 times, and we've calculated the average score, the highest score, and in the end, the average score. You know something that would be worthwhile you trying to explore here? Why don't you figure out if you could figure out how to do the lowest score? Okay guys, now the problem here, writing a pseudocode algorithm which inputs 10 numeric scores, outputs the average, the highest and the lowest. You've basically just seen the solution for this, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to discard that for the moment. I want you to write in your books that problem and then do your best to solve it from memory. Okay? You have to try and retrieve it from your own memory, and if you get stuck, by all means you can go back and have a look about how I solved it, but it's your turn now. Okay, so far we've been looking at loops that are definitive, and by that we mean we know exactly how many times we want it to loop. Well, sometimes they're indefinite. By that we mean we're not too sure how many times we want it to loop. Maybe it's 6 times, maybe it's 70 times. They will keep looping until a certain element or a certain thing happens. And our example we've got here is an algorithm that checks if the password Bob Rocks has been entered. And the person can keep entering it as many times as we want. Effectively, this should keep looping until they get the password correct. There are 2 ways of doing this. There's a repeat and there's a while way of doing this. Repeat basically says keep doing this until something happens, and a while says while a certain condition happens, keep going. So effectively, I think the best way of demonstrating this is having a go at using one of these. So I'm going to use the repeat loop. So I'll write it in here. So I'm going to repeat the statement. So what I want to do is I want to invite somebody to enter a password. Oh, you know what I should do as well? The P word, I should set it now. So the P word, I'll assign it the value of Bob Rocks. That has no significant importance. I just fancy like doing it. So we want to ask the user to input their password. So first of all, we need to ask the question, and to ask the user, we'll use an output. So we're going to output, and the message we'll output would be, please enter your password. Okay, and then we should use a new variable to store the password they're going to do, or they're going to enter rather. If I use the P word, then we'd write over. So if I wanted to store their answer in P word like this, and I wanted to do a user input, what's going to happen is you're going to overwrite the password that's stored, and then it really will break, and we do not want that. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use a new password, and that one is going to be what would be a suitable name for it? It's always a good idea to write names that are appropriate for what you're doing. So maybe, how about attempt? Because this is the person's attempt. Now what we want to do is repeat until we want to repeat until, so this is the test, until what happens? Well, we want to go until password matches attempt. So we could say until password is equal equal to attempt. If we're going to do that, we're going to want to, as soon as that becomes true, then we can go on to having a little message. And the message we wanted to do is say output password correct. Let's just take a moment to evaluate how this worked. Effectively, what's going to happen is in this level here, we can see that password has been set as Bob Rocks. It will then repeat this command here, please enter your password. It will then take in the person's response as attempt, and it will keep looping until password becomes attempt. And then once that happens, the loop will end, and then it will do this message here. Okay, so we're going to have another look at an indefinite loop, and it's actually just a tweak to the one we did before. Previously, we used a repeat loop to allow us as many times as we wanted to attempt that password. Now, we don't actually want to allow that to happen because that would be very insecure. People could keep on attempting until they've managed to hack your password. So we're putting in some additional condition here that the person is only allowed 3 attempts. So one of the first things I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in a new variable here called A, which is going to stand for the number of chances I have left. Oh, do you know what? I was saying to you earlier that we should always use appropriate variable names. So why don't I put that? Why don't I just call it chances? And I'm going to initialize that to a value of 3. What else do I need to initialize? Well, I need the password like before, and it's the same password. Apologies for how terrible my arrows are. I not got the greatest handwriting. Anyway, password has now been stored as boprock, and now we're going to introduce how a while loop works. So we use the command while. Here's the big difference. In a repeat loop, you do the command in the loop, and then you test it using conditions. In a while loop, you test the condition and then you do the stuff in the loop. Let me show you what I mean. This says while, and then you're going to say, well, what's true? Well, here's what we need to look at. I think we need to say, well, chances is above 0. Why above 0? Well, if it's above 0, that means we've still got 3 chances left, or 2 chances left, or 1 chance left. I want to do it that every time they get the answer wrong, we take away a chance. That's the idea. Okay, but what else? Well, and I'm just going to put actually some brackets around that so we can see it's different. And what's the other thing? Well, and we want to see if the password is what? Well, we want to compare it to what the person's entering. Well, I haven't got anything right now, so I'm going to initialize the same name as before, an attempt, and I'm going to assign it the value of blank. So this is essentially just a blank string. Now check this out. I could say, well, while the password is equal to attempt. So I can put that in there, and then let's evaluate this. Let's evaluate it. This is a AND statement. Now an AND means that both sides will have to be true for it to happen. Now let's evaluate the left side. Is chances above 0? Well, chances has been set to 3. Is 3 above 0? Yes. So that's true. So on this side we can say that it's true. But we also have to say and then we need to look at this bit. Is password equal to attempt? And you would have to say no. it's not equal to attempt. So that would be false. What's going to happen here is that the loop will end. I don't actually want that to happen. I want to keep asking these questions and give them all the 3 chances. So that's just wrong, isn't it? I don't want to see when the password is the same as the attempt. I want to actually see that it's not the same, right? So as soon as it becomes not the same, then I want it to stop. So I want it to keep asking, because if it's not the same, then I want it to stop. At the moment it's Bob Rock. That's the attempt, is blank. That would make it true. I want to keep asking. But as soon as it becomes it, the while loop will end, and then we can actually say, congratulations, you've now entered, or your password's been accepted. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to ask the question. We need to ask the user to input their password. So we'd have to do output, and then we'd have to say, what's the question? We'd say, please enter your password, and we want the user to be able to store this. So what variable are we using? Well, the variable we're using to store the responses is attempt. So attempt, and then because we want the user to put it in, we'll use user. In fact, you know what, to be consistent, I should use blue there. User input. And that means that whatever the person's typed in will now be put into the attempt. Okay. Because the person's used one of their chances now, we should say chances is chances, but we want to take away 1. So chances was 3. It allowed us to go through the while loop. We said, please enter your password. The attempt was user input. They've typed it in. Maybe they've got it right, who knows? But whatever has happened, the chances has now gone down by 1. So at this place here, this place here, this chances is now gone down to 2 because we've just taken the -1 off there. So what else do we need to do? Well, I'd say we have to go and end the while loop. So we say end while. Let's explore what's going to happen here. So we say at the beginning is chances above 0. Well, chances started as 3, so 3 is bigger than 0, so that's true. Is password not equal to attempt? Well, password is Bob Rock. Attempt is blank, so they're not equal to each other, so that's also true. We then output, please enter your password, to the user. The user puts their information in and puts it in as attempt. Chances is reduced by 1, so it becomes 2, and then we come way back here to the beginning of the loop. Chances is now 2. Is 2 bigger than 0? Yes, it is. And password is not equal to attempt. Well, we don't know that at the moment. The person might have typed in Bob Rock. And if they typed in Bob Rock, that would be false. And if that's false, what happens is that the loop would terminate. But what could happen is that the person keeps on putting in the wrong answer, and they get chances 1, and then chances 0, and that would mean it would stop that way as well. So it might be because they've not put in the right password, or it might be because the while loop might stop because they've run out of chances, or it might be because they put in the right password. How do we know? Well, here's how we know. We do a final if statement at the end, and what are we testing for? Here's what we're testing for. If the password is the same as the attempt, so if those two things match up, well, what that means is then they've got the message right, and therefore the output, the output should be, what do we say here? Welcome, I think is what it says. So welcome to the system. Whoops. But if they've got it wrong, so else, well, if they've got it wrong, that probably means they've used all their chances. And so what we can say is output password incorrect out of chances. And what we should do is at the end do a end if. Okay, so this is your opportunity to have your turn. This iteration is an indefinite one. How do you know it's indefinite? Well, if you look through the code, it says write an algorithm which inputs numeric scores, outputs how many of them are over 100, then the end of the data is signaled by user input of -1. So you might put in a billion numbers, or you might put in one number, or you might put in 0 numbers. If you put in -1 straight away, it will stop. Being indefinite, it means you either have to use a while or a repeat until loop, and it's your choice how you want to do that. Please attempt this. Write this entire passage into your books and then have a go at trying to answer it.